Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the 5 to 7 Wine Down. This is a special one brought to us by a company called Croatia Unpacked, and their mission is to bring the Croatian wine experience to Canadians from coast to coast. However, it doesn't matter where you're watching this video, anywhere in the world, if you are interested in new and interesting exotic flavor profiles, stay tuned because I've got just that for you from Croatia. Now, it might sound strange to call a country that has been producing wine for millennia a new flavor experience, but that's just simply the reality. Until very recently, you would have been very hard pressed to find Croatian wine outside of the country's borders. Now, there are many reasons for this, not least of which is that wine is such a part of Croatian culture that pretty much everyone has a little patch of vines in their backyard and produce wine pretty much for personal consumption. In fact, until recently and still, it's a badge of honor to produce wine but not sell it commercially, if you can believe that. It's just not something that is very common. And then, of course, 1990s, a bit of a brutal war dropped production to the point where demand outstripped supply. So obviously no need for exports. But the last 20 years have seen the industry be rebuilt, new vineyards planted, new wineries emerge. And now we're looking at, I think, one of the more interesting emerging countries from Central Eastern Europe, a country with a tremendous amount of history, a good 2,500 years, at least 500 years or so before the Romans even arrived. They've been making wine. There are some 120 individual indigenous varieties, so lots of exotic things to discover. Plavac Mali, Teran, Slatina, Malvasia, Istarka, and the variety we're going to focus on today, Posip, to name just a few of those. So let's picture where Croatia is. Southern Europe, Balkans, across the Adriatic from Italy, and the country pretty much stretches from the eastern foothills of the Alps in Slovenia over to the banks of the Danube in the far east, and stretching down along the Dalmatian coast to just south of Dubrovnik. There's a chain of mountains that runs pretty much through the heart of the country, north to south, which more or less divides it into two main climate areas. In the Croatian uplands, higher in the mountains, on the eastern side of the country, well, of course, a more continental climate, more severe winters, hot summers, 4 distinct seasons. And then on the Adriatic side of that mountain range is a pretty classic Mediterranean climate. So you've got coolish winters, but really nice, warm, hot, dry summers. And that is the area we are going to focus on today. Now imagine along the Dalmatian coast, or in Croatia in total, there are about 6,000 kilometers of coastline, 4,000 of which are surrounding the 1,200 or so islands that are scattered throughout the absolutely beautiful, stunning waters of the Adriatic. By the way, fantastic place to go sailing, should you find yourself with the opportunity to go there. Check out some of these beautiful seascapes. Today, there are about 20,000 hectares in total in Croatia, which is not a lot. It might sound like a big number, but to put it into perspective, Burgundy, for example, has 30,000 hectares, and it is considered a very small region within France. So Croatia, small player, but as I said earlier, so much to offer. And those 20,000 hectares divided into 4 regions and 16 official designated protected geographic indications. We're going to focus on the coastal area, the Dalmatian coast in particular. And by the way, did you know that the necktie is a Croatian invention? According to the history books, some Croatian mercenaries showed up to work in the court of King Louis XIII in France, and they were wearing these stylish neckties with their uniforms, something that had not been seen before, even in the court of King Louis. And anyhow, the rest is history. They kind of caught on, became a little bit of a fashion thing, and here we are, several centuries later, still wearing it. In fact, wow, this is the first time I've worn one in a wee while. But I thought, in honor of the invention of the tie in Croatia, I would throw one on today. But back to Posip and the Dalmatian coast. So the variety I want to share with you today is a variety that is naturally indigenous, but it's indigenous not to everywhere in Croatia, but rather the island of Korcula. So according to legend, according to the history books, a farmer rediscovered this variety in 1880, thought it looked quite interesting and indeed did produce some pretty spectacular wines. It has since been replanted throughout the Dalmatian coast, but Korcula, the island, and in particular the village, Kara, where this farmer discovered this variety, is considered the cradle of this really unique Mediterranean variety. In terms of style characteristics, it has very thick skins that turn a little bit pink when it's fully ripe, and it can produce a wine with tremendous amounts of extract. And in fact, it's often compared to Viognier, the Croatian Viognier, perhaps, and because of the similarity with the thick skins, a deeply colored wine even when young, and the potential for longevity and high levels of extract, and also quite aromatic, although I find Posip a little less intensely aromatic than Viognier. So I have 3 different examples to show you here today. They're all available currently in Ontario, hopefully in other markets as well. And let's start out with the oldest and also one of the newest wineries at the same time. This is the Posip from Stina winery. So the building in which this wine is made was established in 1903. It was originally a cooperative cellar that is set right on the water. So we're in the island of Brac. We're not in Korcula, but a nearby, also fairly large island. And these co-op cellars right there on the coast. Look, you can see the idea was you would just take the barrels of wine and roll them out that cellar door into the waiting ships for shipping throughout the Mediterranean. So a little bit more than a century later, in 2009, arrives Szabo and Brac, who came with a very ambitious project to buy these old cellars, revive wine production on the island of Brac, planted some 50 hectares of vines in the most amazing condition. I'm talking extraordinary steep slopes, literally tumbling down into the sea, and amazingly stony. Look at the stones in that vineyard there. The sharply geologically minded amongst you will notice that that is limestone, that stark white stone. And it's actually a formation called karst, which runs all the way along from Istria, around Trieste in Italy, down through Croatia and out through the Dalmatian coast. So the career of Stina's winemaker, Leo Grayson, started in 2001. He worked with Mike Grgic, a familiar name. Those of you fans of the Napa Valley, Mike Grgic has a terrific winery there, but he also has one in Croatia. He's of Croatian extraction. And Leo started working with him, and in fact, he's still the chief consultant for Grgic, Croatian operation, but he also joined Stina from the beginning in 2009. So he's followed this project. He's had his hands on these grapes from the beginning. And his take on Posip is more towards finesse and elegance. As I said, it's a thick-skinned variety. You can easily push the extract, but in this case, no press fractions are used. And you can see you get a paler, lighter, more delicate color. No press fractions, no wood, emphasizing the finesse, the quite striking acidity considering the warm Mediterranean climate here, and a really distinctive non-fruity stoniness that blends in beautifully with the sort of more floral almond blossom type flavors. But a really, really very pretty wine. So the second wine I want to share with you is from a winery called Korta Katarina. And this winery is the project of an American couple, wine-loving American couple named Penny and Lee Anderson, who fell in love with southern Croatia on a trip there and decided to invest in the area, bought a hotel in 2001 in a little village on the Pelješac Peninsula, which is right opposite the island of Korčula, and they rebuilt a beautiful little hotel. It's now a relais and chateau, spectacular place to visit if you have the chance. And they also built a winery because it's all part of the experience there. Now, in this case, the grapes come from Korčula, so not the Pelješac Peninsula, but across on the island from that village of Kara that I mentioned earlier, the birthplace, if you will, at least the origins of Posip as we know them to be. And the style here, you can see there, the color is a little deeper. If you see the vineyards on the island of Korčula, you see that it's still limestone, but a lot more iron in the soil, which gives it that reddish color. And I think also gives this wine its slightly deeper color here as the iron tends to oxidize as it makes its way from the soil into the wine. Yes, that does happen. And I think, in my experience, at least a more deeply colored wine, there's also a more oxidative aging process. 40% of this wine is aged in barrel. So of course, a little bit more air at that point, and then it's blended in with the stainless portion to give, in my opinion, a more robust, more substantial, more chewy version of Posip on the upper end of that extract scale. But lots of aging potential here. It's already moved along that fruit development profile line into more ripe orchard fruit, apricot, peaches, dripping ripe peaches, and even a little bit of exotic fruit, some tangerine, some grapefruit, not quite into guava, but a rich and full-bodied style of wine, to be sure. The last one I want to share with you is from a winery called St. Hills. This is their version of Posip. Now, this is the winery project of Dalmatian natives Ivana and Ernest Tully. So they bought some virgin, used to be forest land, right on the coast in southern Dalmatia, about 70 kilometers or so north of Dubrovnik. And in fact, the winery is in the beautiful walled city, UNESCO World Heritage Site of Dubrovnik. Worth the journey itself just to see that beautiful city. They've since expanded their holdings into the Pelješac Peninsula. They make in Dingac, a very famous Plavac Mali red wine appellation. They make some wine up in Istria as well. But this Posip, of course, comes from Korcula. We're back to the origins. We're back to the village of Korta. So grapes are sourced there and then treated to, I would say, a midway process between the Stina that we first tried, all finesse, all stainless steel, and the Korta Katarina, a little bit of wood, a little bit more extraction, more full-bodied. St. Hills kind of finds a nice middle ground. This is all concrete fermented and aged, and as a result, sort of hits that really fine, yet still extracted style that Korcula Posip tends to give. Pretty spectacular vineyards on the island of Korcula. Again, it's nice to watch a video, it's nice to taste the wines, but it's even nicer to jump on a sailboat and go cruise the Dalmatian coast, stop in and taste these wines for yourself. And if you're getting hungry and wondering what you would eat alongside a bottle of Posip, well, look no further than the octopus salad, which is right where I'm heading right this moment. Because, well, what could be more perfect than Mediterranean octopus, fresh, grilled, in a nice cold salad, and then there you go. So, thanks for tuning in. This was the special Posip version of the 5 to 7 Wine Down, brought to you again by Croatia Unpacked. If you want some more information on these wines and you live in Canada, go to croatiaunpacked.com. Otherwise, find them somewhere, and we'll see you for another episode of the 5 to 7 Wine Down. Cheers. Thanks for tuning in.